He boarded the plane like any loving father, calm, respectful, with two excited kids by his side. But the moment he tried to sit next to them in first class, the flight attendant stopped him cold. She didn't check his ticket. She didn't ask questions. She just assumed. In front of his children, she forced him to the back of the plane. What she didn't realize? The man she just humiliated was the silent force behind the very airline she worked for. And by the time the flight landed, her career and her idea of power would never be the same. Before we start the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell icon so you never miss the next one. The gate area buzzed with the usual noise: boarding announcements, rolling suitcases, and scattered conversations. Among the crowd stood a tall black man named Andre, holding the small hands of his two children. His son Caleb was 8, and his daughter Maya just 6. Both kids were dressed neatly in matching travel hoodies and sneakers, backpacks slung over their shoulders. Andre wore a gray blazer, jeans, and a calm expression. He wasn't the loud type, he didn't need to be. Their boarding passes clearly read, First Class, Seats 2A, 2B, 2C. Andre had made the reservations himself weeks ago. Everything pre-booked, every detail confirmed. He wasn't just taking a trip. This was a rare weekend away with his children after a tough few months, a chance to disconnect, be fully present, and make memories without interruptions. As they stepped onto the plane, Caleb and Maya raced ahead to find their seats, full of excitement. Andre smiled softly, following behind. He placed their bags carefully in the overhead bin, helped them with seatbelts, tucked in the complimentary blankets, and sat beside them in 2C. Maya giggled about the warm towel the attendant had handed her earlier. Caleb was already looking through the entertainment screen, wide-eyed. Andre glanced around the first-class cabin. Most passengers hadn't boarded yet. Everything felt relaxed for a moment. Then came the sound of heels. A white flight attendant named Denise moved down the aisle with a practiced smile, nodding at passengers, double-checking seat assignments. But when her eyes landed on Andre and his kids, her expression shifted. The warmth faded. Her steps slowed. She stopped beside them. "Good evening," she said, a little too formally. Her eyes moved from Maya to Caleb, then settled on Andre. "Are you sitting with them?" Andre looked up. "Yes, I'm their father." Denise blinked, then quickly checked her manifest. I see tickets for 2A and 2B, but not for 2C. Andre pulled out his boarding pass and handed it to her, calm as ever. 2C, right here." She scanned it, then frowned. "This seat wasn't under your name originally. Were you upgraded at the counter?" Andre shook his head. "Number I booked all 3 seats together 3 weeks ago." Denise didn't respond. She looked down at her tablet, then back at the kids. "I'm going to confirm this with the gate agent. Please stay here until I return." She turned and walked off briskly. Andre exhaled slowly. Maya leaned closer to him and whispered, "Why did she ask if you're sitting with us?" Caleb looked worried now. "Are we in trouble?" Andre gave a gentle smile. "No, bud. Not even close." But he could already feel it. Something was off. Denise hadn't questioned anyone else. She hadn't looked twice at the man in 1D or the couple in 3A and 3B. Just him. Just them. He knew where this was headed. And he knew this wasn't going to be just another flight. Denise returned a few minutes later, her tablet clutched tightly in one hand. Her expression had hardened. The kind of look someone wears when they've already made up their mind, no matter what facts they're holding. "I've confirmed with the gate," she said stiffly. "There appears to have been an error in the system. This seat was reassigned during check-in. We'll need you to relocate to the economy cabin." Andre didn't move. "Excuse me?" Denise's voice stayed calm, but her tone sharpened. "Your children may stay here, but your ticket does not reflect current first-class seating. I'm asking you to move to your assigned economy seat so we can complete boarding." Andre sat back, eyes steady. "I didn't request a reassignment. No one notified me. And this seat was confirmed in my reservation." Denise gestured to another crew member in the galley. "It's a simple request, sir. Let's not make a scene." Maya's eyes widened. Caleb looked up in disbelief. "But why can't he sit with us?" Andre looked down at them, then back at Denise. "My children are minors. They're not flying alone." "You'll still be on the same flight," she replied. "We'll seat you nearby. I'm their legal guardian, and I'm not leaving them alone in a separate cabin." Denise let out a short breath, clearly losing patience. "Sir, I'm not going to argue. Please take your things and move to the back." Andre stood slowly, not raising his voice. He reached for his blazer and removed his ticket from the pocket once again. He held it up between two fingers, calm as ever. "I want you to take another look." But Denise didn't even glance at it. "Sir, please comply, or I'll be forced to escalate this further." The younger flight attendant standing behind her, Ashley, shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the children. Her voice was quiet. "Should we double-check the manifest again?" Denise shot her a sharp look. "It's already been handled." Passengers in rows 1 and 3 had now turned toward the scene. A few pulled out earbuds. Others whispered. Nobody intervened. No one spoke up. Andre turned back to Caleb and Maya. "I'll be right back," he said softly, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. "Don't worry." Then, without another word, he picked up his carry-on and walked toward the back of the plane. Ashley looked down at the children, clearly unsettled. But Denise only turned and marched back toward the galley like it was just another problem checked off her list. She didn't realize it yet. But this problem had just changed everything. Andre settled into the narrow economy seat, far from his children. The cabin felt colder here, noisier, less personal. He sat still for a moment, staring at the back of the seat in front of him, breathing slowly through his nose. Around him, passengers shuffled past with backpacks and snacks, oblivious to what had just happened a few rows ahead. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. The screen lit up with a message from his assistant, confirming a boardroom appointment scheduled for later that week. But Andre ignored it. Instead, he opened a new message and typed quickly, "They just removed me from my seat. Said my ticket wasn't valid. Kids are still in first class." He hit send. Seconds later, a reply popped up. "What? Which flight?" Andre typed the flight number, his jaw set, fingers steady. "Flight 684, headed to LAX." A pause. "Stay put, I'll take care of it." Andre locked the screen and placed the phone face down on the tray table. He wasn't worried, not even close. He had built his life on staying calm in chaos, and right now he had no doubt this situation was going to unravel fast. Meanwhile, back in the first-class cabin, Caleb kept glancing toward the aisle. His face was tense. Maya fidgeted in her seat, her hands still tucked under the blanket their father had given her. Ashley, the younger flight attendant, approached them quietly, crouching to their level. "Are you both okay?" she asked gently. Maya nodded slowly. "Why did that lady make our dad leave?" Ashley hesitated. "She thought there was a mistake, but everything's going to be fine." Caleb looked her in the eyes. "He didn't do anything wrong." Ashley didn't know what to say to that, because he was right. In the galley, Denise leaned against the counter, sipping coffee as if nothing had happened. A junior attendant walked by and asked if she needed anything. She waved him off. "Just handling another seating mix-up. Happens all the time." But it wasn't just another mix-up, not this time. And in the cockpit, the captain had just received a priority message from ground control. His co-pilot raised an eyebrow as the screen blinked twice. "Looks like we're getting a call. It's coming from the corporate operations line." The captain picked up the in-flight phone and waited as the connection clicked in. A calm, authoritative voice came through. "Captain, we've received a call from Mr. Andre Beckett, passenger in seat 2C. Yes, sir. That passenger is the primary shareholder and owner of this airline. He was just moved to economy." "Understood." The captain's face shifted. What had just seemed like a normal flight had suddenly turned into something much bigger. Denise didn't notice the shift happening just a few feet away. She was too busy organizing the drink carts, humming to herself as if she hadn't just humiliated a father in front of his children. To her, it was routine. Sometimes people tried to sneak upgrades. Sometimes the system glitched. She didn't dwell on it. But in the cockpit, the captain turned away from the in-flight phone, his expression tight. He looked at his co-pilot. "That man back there, the one she forced into economy," he said quietly. "He's the owner." The co-pilot blinked. "You're kidding." "Nope, and corporate wants it fixed immediately, before we even leave the runway." The captain flipped the intercom switch and spoke calmly into the speaker. "Flight attendant Denise, please report to the cockpit immediately." Back in the galley, Denise froze mid-sip. She looked up, confused. It wasn't common to be summoned like that before takeoff. She placed the cup down and smoothed her uniform, glancing at Ashley on her way up the aisle. "Hold the front," she muttered. Ashley nodded but didn't look up. Inside the cockpit, the moment Denise stepped through the door, she could feel the temperature drop. The captain turned toward her, his face unreadable. "Ms. Denise," he said firmly, "we've just received word from operations. There's a serious issue involving passenger Andre Beckett." She nodded, still not understanding. "Yes, I had to move him from first class. There was a ticket mismatch." The captain raised his hand. "Number there wasn't." She stopped speaking. "The man you removed is Andre Beckett. He's the majority owner of this airline." Denise stared at him, the words not registering for a second. The captain continued. "You are to escort Mr. Beckett back to his original seat immediately. Apologize. In front of the cabin, in front of his children, and once we land, you will file a written report with the executive board." The blood drained from Denise's face. I didn't know." "That's the problem," the captain cut in. "You didn't ask, you assumed." Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. "Fix it," he said flatly. Denise turned, her face pale, hands trembling slightly as she reached for the cockpit door. She stepped back into the cabin, heart pounding. Passengers looked up as she walked past, some with curiosity, others with suspicion. She felt their eyes follow her all the way down the aisle, heavier with every step. In the back of the plane, Andre sat calmly, flipping through the safety card, his phone resting quietly on his tray. He looked up when he saw her. Denise stopped beside him, forcing a polite smile. "Mr. Beckett, there's been a misunderstanding. I'd like to escort you back to your seat in first class." Andre didn't move right away. He looked at her for a long, silent second. Then, with a slow nod, he stood. The silence in the cabin as he followed her back to the front was louder than any words. As Andre stepped back into the first-class cabin, a hush fell over the seats. Conversations paused, earbuds came out, and phones tilted subtly to the side. Everyone saw what was happening, and more importantly, who it was happening to. Caleb's face lit up the moment he saw his father. "Dad," he called out, already unbuckling his seatbelt. Andre gave him a small nod, steady and reassuring. Maya clutched her stuffed panda close, eyes wide as she watched her father return. She didn't say anything, but her grip on the toy relaxed slightly. Denise, walking just one step ahead of Andre, looked like someone walking toward their own sentencing. She stopped near the 3 seats and turned to face him, her posture stiff and robotic. The words caught in her throat. She wasn't used to this. Not to apologizing. Not like this. "I apologize," she said, forcing the sentence out, "for the inconvenience. There was an error on my part regarding your seating assignment." Andre didn't respond right away. He looked at her, calm, expression unreadable. But the silence said everything. Ashley stood to the side, watching, her eyes flicking between Denise and the children. She looked like she wanted to speak, but knew this wasn't her moment. Denise took a deep breath, her voice quieter this time. "It was a mistake. I'm sorry for how I handled the situation." Andre nodded once, then turned to his kids. "Scoot over," he said gently. Caleb slid toward the window, and Andre took his seat beside them once more, adjusting his tray, folding his coat neatly on his lap. Maya smiled up at him. "Can we watch the movie now?" "Yeah, sweetheart," he said. "Go ahead." Denise remained standing there, unsure if she should say something else. No one told her to leave. No one told her to stay. She looked around at the other passengers, most of them watching with a mixture of quiet judgment and guilt. Some quickly looked away when she made eye contact. Others didn't bother pretending. She stepped back slowly and made her way toward the galley. Her shoes didn't feel as loud before, but now each step echoed in her ears. As she passed Ashley, the younger attendant didn't hide her expression. Her eyes narrowed just slightly. Her voice was low but firm. "You didn't even check his name, did you?" Denise stopped. She glanced at her but didn't answer. Ashley shook her head. "You just looked at him and assumed." Denise's lips parted as if to reply, but nothing came out. She turned back toward the galley without another word. Back in seat 2C, Andre sat with his hands folded, watching the small screen in front of him without pressing play. He hadn't said much. He hadn't needed to, because the silence said more than an outburst ever could. He leaned back, glancing at his children. Caleb was already laughing at a cartoon. Maya had her headphones on, legs swinging slightly under the seat. They were fine, for now. But Andre knew something had shifted. And so did everyone else on that plane. The plane hadn't even taken off yet, but the atmosphere in first class had changed completely. What was once quiet and comfortable now buzzed with a silent tension. Passengers avoided each other's eyes. Some fidgeted with their seatbelts. Others stared hard at their screens, pretending not to think about what just unfolded in front of them. Andre sat still, arms crossed, eyes on the tray in front of him. He hadn't touched the welcome drink. His fingers drummed lightly against the armrest. His mind wasn't on the plane anymore. It was replaying the moment, Denise's voice, her assumptions, her refusal to listen. And the way she spoke in front of his children, like he was some kind of intruder in a place they didn't expect him to belong. The part that bothered him the most wasn't what she said. It was how confidently she said it. Maya was leaning against his shoulder now, relaxed, her stuffed panda wedged between them. Caleb had paused his movie and turned slightly, watching his father. "You okay, Dad?" he asked quietly. Andre looked down at him, softening for a moment. "Yeah, bud, I'm all right." "Was she mad at you?" "No," Andre said with a calm that didn't match the fire building inside him. "She was just wrong." Caleb nodded slowly, not fully understanding, but sensing there was more to it. He went back to his screen, but his expression had changed. Ashley approached carefully, holding a tray with drinks. Her voice was quiet, respectful. "Can I get you anything, Mr. Beckett? Something for the kids?" Andre looked up, then gave her a small nod. "Water for me. Juice for them, please." Ashley smiled slightly, grateful he wasn't lashing out at her. "Coming right up." As she walked away, Andre's phone vibrated again. He checked the message. "Confirmed. Board has been notified. Senior Operations monitoring your flight live. Will follow up upon landing." He slipped the phone back into his pocket, but not before glancing once more at the name of the sender. Harold Lynn, Executive Vice President, Beckett Airways Group. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. In the galley, Denise leaned against the metal counter, her hands gripping the edge so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her heart was still racing. Her ears still rang with the captain's voice. Her mind was spinning. She had served thousands of passengers in her 12 years with the airline. She dealt with rude ones, drunk ones, even threatening ones. She always believed she had good instincts. She prided herself on being strict, no-nonsense, professional. But she didn't feel professional now. She felt exposed. Ashley returned to the galley and reached into the cooler for the drinks. She didn't say anything at first, just moved efficiently, her eyes avoiding Denise. "Why didn't you scan the ticket?" she asked finally. Denise didn't answer. "Seriously," Ashley continued, her tone sharper this time. "Why didn't you just scan it like you do for everyone else?" "I didn't think I needed to," Denise muttered. Ashley froze for a moment, then turned toward her. "No, You chose not to, that's not the same. Denise glanced at her sharply, but Ashley was already walking away, tray in hand, focused on her job. In the cockpit, the captain received another ping on his screen. The message was short. Mr. Beckett is being observed. Ensure he receives full protocol service. Do not leave cabin oversight to Denise. Management decision pending. He leaned back in his seat, rubbing his chin. Well, he muttered to himself, looks like this flight just became a corporate problem. Back in first class, Ashley returned with the drinks, placing them carefully on the tray table. Thank you, Andre said softly. She nodded. If there's anything else, just let me know. He didn't respond right away. He looked at her for a second, then asked, How long have you worked for this airline? Almost 2 years, she replied. Andre gave her a small nod. You're doing fine. Ashley blinked, surprised by the compliment, then gave a quiet smile and stepped away. Maya tapped her dad's arm. Can we watch the movie now? Andre smiled at her, kissed the top of her head, and handed her the headphones. Yeah, baby girl, go ahead. The plane began to taxi onto the runway. The hum of the engines rose. The seatbelt sign dinged. And somewhere in the back of the cabin, Denise closed her eyes and took a deep breath, because she knew this flight had taken a direction she couldn't control anymore. And control was something she never expected to lose. The plane lifted off the runway with a smooth, steady climb, but inside the cabin, tension continued to swirl beneath the surface. Passengers leaned into their seats, some flipping through magazines, others closing their eyes and pretending to sleep. But even as the plane reached cruising altitude, the energy in first class hadn't settled. It was too quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful, just cautious. Andre sat still, his body relaxed but his mind alert. He had always been measured, always stayed calm when others lost control. That's how he built his business. That's how he earned respect. But as the clouds passed silently outside the window, a storm was building inside him. Not loud, not reckless, but slow, patient, and deliberate. He wasn't angry for himself. He'd faced people like Denise his entire life. People who smiled when you walked in, then questioned whether you belonged. But watching his kids witness that, watching Maya's face when the flight attendant made him get up, and Caleb's confusion when no one stood up to say it was wrong, that was what stayed with him. He leaned his head back and closed his eyes, trying to quiet the weight in his chest. It wasn't just about one seat. It never was. A soft voice broke through. Excuse me, Mr. Beckett. It was Ashley again. She knelt beside his seat with a note in hand. This was just handed to me from the cockpit, she said quietly. The captain thought you should see it. Andre took the folded paper. It was small, clean, airline stationery. Mr. Beckett, corporate operations is monitoring this flight. Upon arrival, our executive team will be waiting at the gate to speak with you directly. We apologize for what occurred and assure you it will be addressed. Captain Sanders. He folded the note slowly and slipped it into his pocket without a word. Ashley stood. Let me know if you need anything. Andre nodded. Thank you. As she walked away, Denise appeared at the far end of the aisle, pretending to check overhead bins. She hadn't looked in Andre's direction once since his return. She stuck to her side of the cabin like it was marked off in invisible tape. Every time a passenger asked for something, she passed it on to Ashley instead. Her voice had dropped. Her steps were slower. Her confidence, the kind she carried like a badge, was nowhere to be seen. In the back of the plane, the crew was whispering. The galley buzzed with quiet talk. A junior attendant named Mark leaned toward another and muttered, You hear about that guy in 2C? The other nodded. The owner. Can you believe she kicked him out? She's done, Mark said simply. Even in the economy cabin, word was spreading. A tech consultant in row 12 had already messaged his friend. You won't believe what just happened on my flight. The airline owner got kicked to the back, then called back up. Whole plane saw it. But Andre wasn't thinking about the fallout. He was watching his children. Maya had curled up in her seat, fast asleep against his side. Caleb was focused on a superhero movie but kept glancing at his dad now and then. Andre smiled at him softly. Caleb whispered, "She's gonna be in big trouble, right?" Andre hesitated, then nodded. "She might." Caleb tilted his head. "Are you gonna fire her?" Andre looked out the window for a moment. "I'm going to make sure she learns from it." "But she was mean," Caleb said, confused. "I know," Andre replied. "But sometimes, people don't even know they're being unfair. That's why we don't just punish. We teach. That's how things really change." Caleb nodded slowly, chewing on the words, trying to understand. Denise stood frozen near row 1, watching them. The way Andre talked to his kids, the quiet authority in his voice, the grace in his presence. She had made a mistake. But what was worse, she was just starting to understand how big that mistake really was. She thought her job gave her control, gave her the right to decide who belonged where. But now she knew she didn't even belong in control of the cabin she thought she ruled, and there were still hours left in the flight, hours for that truth to sink in. The hours in the sky passed slowly, but for some, like Denise, they dragged like a sentence. She spent most of the flight hiding behind busy work, checking tray tables that didn't need checking, wiping already spotless counters, pretending she had tasks that didn't exist. Anything to avoid the front row. Anything to avoid eye contact with the man whose dignity she had tried to strip away in front of his own children. Every time she heard laughter from 2A or 2B, it cut deeper. Not because they mocked her. They didn't. That would have been easier. No, it was their peace that made it worse. Andre hadn't raised his voice, hadn't demanded anything, hadn't even spoken to her since she escorted him back. And yet, the silence was louder than any confrontation could have been. Meanwhile, Ashley continued her duties in first class with quiet efficiency. She brought snacks, topped off drinks, and checked on Andre's row more than anyone else. Not because he asked, he didn't, but because she felt it was the right thing to do. She had seen what happened, and unlike Denise, she couldn't unsee it. During one of her passes, Ashley paused at Andre's seat. Caleb had his headphones on again, and Maya was still sleeping, curled up in a blanket. Ashley leaned in slightly and spoke just loud enough for Andre to hear. "I know it's not my place, sir, but I just wanted to say I'm really sorry for what happened earlier." Andre looked up at her, surprised for a moment. Then he nodded. "You didn't do anything wrong." Ashley's eyes softened. "But I didn't say anything either. And I should have." He studied her for a beat, then gave a slight smile. "Thank you. That means something." As she walked away, Denise watched from the galley, her stomach turning. The shift in dynamic was obvious. The crew had adjusted without a word. Ashley had quietly taken lead of the first-class cabin, and no one had questioned it, not even the captain. Denise had become a ghost on her own shift, present but no longer trusted. She knew that when they landed, there would be questions, reports, reviews. But it was more than that. It was the way no one looked at her the same. The way Ashley didn't even ask for guidance anymore. The way other crew members stopped making eye contact when she entered the galley. And then there was Andre. The way he sat with such composure. The way he kept his children close. He wasn't reacting. He was watching, recording, letting her unravel on her own. Denise had dealt with unruly passengers, entitled CEOs, rude travelers who thought their money gave them power. But this was different. Andre didn't act entitled. He acted certain. He carried himself like someone who didn't need to prove who he was, because who he was spoke for itself. That's what made it unbearable. At the front of the plane, the captain received another update on his in-flight terminal. A message from corporate. Mr. Beckett's legal counsel has requested incident footage. First-class cabin footage flagged and archived. Confirm crew status upon landing. Ensure Ms. Denise Porter is made available for immediate debrief. The captain read the message, sighed through his nose, and looked over at his co-pilot. She's not walking off this plane like any other day. Nope, the co-pilot muttered. Not after this. Back in seat 2C, Andre finally opened his laptop. He didn't need to work, but it gave him something to do, something to focus on as the minutes ticked by. He glanced down at Maya, still sleeping peacefully with her legs curled up. Then at Caleb, who had now taken off his headphones and was watching the clouds roll by. Caleb looked over. Are we almost there? Almost, Andre said, closing his laptop. Few more minutes. Will they say sorry to you again when we land? Andre's eyes didn't leave the window. We'll see. But he knew they would. Not because he demanded it, but because now they had no choice. In the back of the plane, Denise finally sat down on a jump seat, her eyes fixed on the floor, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. She had once believed experience gave her authority, that her years in uniform allowed her to make calls based on instinct. But this wasn't instinct. It was something uglier, something she didn't want to name, but couldn't deny anymore, because now the entire plane had seen what she did. And when the wheels touched down, it wouldn't be buried. It would be waiting at the gate. The captain's voice broke through the cabin as the plane began its slow descent. Ladies and gentlemen, we've begun our approach. Please fasten your seatbelts and make sure your tray tables are in their upright positions. We'll be landing shortly. The usual rustling began, passengers adjusting themselves, stowing laptops, finishing drinks. But in first class, there was an edge to every movement. The energy was uneasy, like everyone knew something important was coming, but no one dared to acknowledge it. Andre fastened his belt, gently nudging Caleb, who had started to drift off. Maya remained curled against him, undisturbed. He looked out the window again. The city lights had come into view, tiny glittering dots far below. He could see the runway lights blinking ahead. And for the first time since the confrontation, he allowed himself a breath of satisfaction. He hadn't spoken a word to Denise since being brought back. He hadn't written a complaint. He hadn't called anyone during the flight. He didn't need to. His silence had done more than yelling ever could. And now, the rest was already in motion. In the galley, Denise sat frozen. The seatbelt across her lap barely buckled. Her hands were clenched tightly in her lap. Her eyes flicked upward every few seconds, waiting for the final ding that would tell her this flight, this nightmare, was about to be over. But it wouldn't be over. Not when the aircraft doors opened. That's when the real consequences would begin. Ashley stood at the front of the first-class cabin, doing the final walkthrough. She adjusted pillows, made sure blankets were folded, and gave each passenger a polite smile. When she reached Andre, she paused. If you need assistance at the gate, she said gently, let me know. I'll walk you through personally. Andre shook his head with a small smile. I think I've got it covered. Ashley smiled back, understanding the meaning layered beneath the calm response. Then she moved on to the next row. Back in the cockpit, the captain's dashboard lit up with one final incoming message from corporate. Security has arrived. Gate team and executive staff in position. Ms. Denise Porter to be detained for immediate incident review. The captain clicked off the alert, looked toward the aisle, and exhaled. That's it, he muttered. The wheels touched down with a soft thud. The cabin jolted slightly, and the plane slowed as it taxied toward the gate. Passengers around Andre stirred, reaching for their bags, stretching, whispering. But no one near him said a word. They all knew who he was now. They had seen what happened. And their silence. It wasn't ignorance anymore, it was guilt. The seatbelt light dinged off. The usual scramble began, but not like it usually did. Instead of the rush to stand, there was a strange, hesitant stillness. All eyes subtly turned to Andre. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Andre didn't move. He simply sat there, one hand resting on Caleb's shoulder, the other gently brushing Maya's curls. Calm, in control, as always. At the front of the plane, the door opened, and the difference was immediate. 2 uniformed security officers stepped onto the jet bridge, followed by a sharply dressed man with a silver name badge that read, Director of Flight Operations. His eyes scanned the cabin with precision. He gave a quick nod to the captain, then motioned toward the galley. "Ms. Porter," he called out. Denise stood slowly, her knees stiff, her face pale. "Yes. You'll need to step off with us now." Passengers gasped. Some pretended not to look, but their eyes followed her every step. Others glanced at Andre and then back to the front. No one said a word. Ashley, now standing near the door, stepped aside. Denise tried to keep her posture straight, but her hands were trembling. She didn't speak. She didn't argue. She simply followed them off the plane, each step heavier than the last. As she passed Andre's row, she risked one glance in his direction. But he didn't look back. He was helping Maya sit up, whispering something to Caleb, brushing a wrinkle out of his daughter's sleeve. His focus was exactly where it had been from the start, on his kids. And that quiet dismissal hit harder than any confrontation ever could. Denise stepped off the plane and into the terminal, the doors hissing shut behind her. Back in the cabin, passengers slowly began to stand. Some glanced at Andre with newfound recognition. A few nodded subtly. One man offered a quiet "sir" as he passed by, eyes low, voice respectful. Ashley returned to Andre's row and crouched slightly to meet his eye. "Would you like me to help you off?" Andre stood, scooping up Maya's bag and handing Caleb his. "No, thank you," he said gently. "We're good." He took one child's hand in each of his and stepped into the aisle. The first-class cabin parted for them without a word. And as they walked forward, calm, steady, and silent, every person on that plane knew what had just happened wasn't about one seat. It was about every time someone like Denise thought they had the power to decide who belonged. And this time, they chose the wrong man. The terminal was unusually quiet for that time of day, but the silence had nothing to do with flight schedules. It was the kind of silence that followed a storm. The heavy pause after a wave had crashed down and changed the shoreline forever. A few airline staff near the gate kept their eyes fixed on the jet bridge, standing straighter than usual. They had received the memo. Executives were arriving. A passenger had been wronged, and not just any passenger. Andre stepped off the plane with his children at his side, holding one in each hand. His pace was steady, unhurried, his expression calm but unreadable. He wasn't looking for an audience, but the terminal gave him one anyway. Gate agents froze. A ground staff supervisor adjusted her badge and nodded in quiet acknowledgement. Uniformed security held back a few curious onlookers. The man from operations, the one who had removed Denise, stepped forward to greet Andre. "Mr. Beckett," he said, offering a hand with both respect and caution. "Welcome home. If you'd allow us, we have a private lounge prepared for you and your children while the review begins." Andre looked at Caleb, then at Maya, whose sleepy eyes were now fully awake. "That okay with you two?" Caleb shrugged. "Can I get snacks?" The executive smiled, already turning toward his team. "Absolutely, anything you need." Andre nodded once. "Lead the way." As they were escorted to a nearby lounge, the terminal buzzed behind them. A few passengers from the same flight began murmuring among themselves. "Was that the guy?" "Yeah. The flight attendant kicked him to economy. He owns the airline." "No way." "I saw it. The whole thing. She didn't even check his ticket." In the private suite, Caleb and Maya were already distracted by the snacks and soft couches. A kind hostess handed them juice boxes and a tablet loaded with games. But Andre remained standing, speaking quietly with the director of operations near the far wall. "We're launching a full internal investigation," the man said, "and the CEO will be reaching out personally within the hour. We take this very seriously." Andre raised an eyebrow. "You think she still doesn't know who I am?" The executive cleared his throat. "She knows now. We've suspended her, pending review. It's unlikely she'll wear that uniform again." Andre nodded slowly. "It's not about the uniform," he said. "It's about what made her think she had the right to decide I didn't belong. That doesn't come from training. That comes from culture." The executive stayed silent. There was nothing he could say to defend it. Andre continued. You want to fix this? Don't just fire one person. Fix the system that gave her the confidence to act that way. We will, the man said quietly. And we'd like your input. Andre turned his head, glancing over at Maya, who was showing Caleb something on her tablet and giggling. He looked back. I'll send you a list. The executive nodded, relieved. Thank you. Just then the lounge doors opened again, and a sharply dressed woman entered. Another high-ranking executive, flanked by a corporate assistant. Mr. Beckett, she said, approaching with an outstretched hand. On behalf of the board, I want to personally apologize for what happened. It was unacceptable. Andre shook her hand, but his face didn't soften. It was predictable, he said plainly. She blinked. Excuse me? I didn't say it was shocking, he replied. Just predictable. People don't expect me to sit in first class with my kids. That's the real issue. The assistant behind her typed quickly, trying to capture every word. But Andre didn't care who heard him now. He'd spent years keeping quiet, letting things slide. Not anymore. The woman regained her composure. We're implementing new bias training protocols across all divisions. Immediate retraining. We're also reviewing all first-class protocols and adding oversight to ticket verification practices. Andre gave her a slow nod. Start with accountability. Then work your way to awareness. She nodded quickly. Understood. The assistant leaned forward. Would you be willing to share your story publicly? Andre didn't hesitate. If it helps someone else get treated better, yes. Maya tugged at his hand. Dad, can we go home now? He smiled down at her and crouched to her level. Almost, baby girl. Just a few more minutes. She nodded, then ran back to the couch where Caleb was now building something with digital blocks on the tablet. Andre stood back up. I don't need more apologies, he said to the executives. I need better standards. Do that, and I won't have to fly with my guard up. The woman nodded again, more slowly this time. We hear you. Andre looked at her one last time. Good, because if you didn't, this wouldn't be a private conversation. Then he turned and walked back to his children, because they were why he was here. Not to be right, not to prove a point, but to make sure that the next time someone saw a black father flying first class with his kids, they wouldn't question it. They'd just see a family, nothing more, nothing less. And this time, the system would remember. Far from the polished glass of the executive lounge, in a back office tucked away behind a restricted corridor, Denise sat alone, shoulders tight, eyes fixed on the corner of the room where the wall met the floor. Her uniform, once a symbol of confidence, felt like it no longer belonged to her. Her badge was gone, turned in, her crew ID deactivated. She had been walked off the gate not with handcuffs, not with shouting, but with silence. And somehow, that silence felt worse. The room was small. A frosted window gave a view of nothing but a hallway. On the table in front of her sat a blank incident report form and a cold cup of coffee. No one had spoken to her in 15 minutes. They had left her alone with her thoughts. And that was exactly what she had started to fear the most. The door finally opened. A man in a charcoal gray suit entered. His face was professional, but not kind. He didn't offer a greeting. He set a folder on the table and sat across from her. Ms. Porter, he began without preamble. Before we proceed, I want you to understand that this is a formal investigation. Your statements here will determine whether disciplinary action will escalate beyond suspension. Denise nodded slightly. Her voice, when it came, was hoarse. I understand. He opened the folder and took out a printed manifest. You removed a passenger from seat 2C, is that correct? She swallowed hard. Yes. He looked up. Did you verify the passenger's name against the manifest before removing him? Denise hesitated. I checked the first 2 tickets, the children. When I saw their guardian, I didn't expect... You didn't expect a black father in first class. He finished for her, his voice flat. Denise didn't respond. He continued. You told the passenger his seat had been reassigned. Our system shows no reassignment. The original booking was under the name of Andre Beckett, him, and his 2 children. I thought, she started, then stopped herself. I didn't recognize the name. You didn't need to recognize the name, he replied. You needed to read it. She looked down at her hands. Her nails were chewed, skin around them red and raw from fidgeting. He leaned back. Do you know how many employees report to Mr. Beckett's division of the airline? Denise shook her head. Over 6,000, he said. He built this airline. He didn't inherit it, didn't marry into it, didn't buy it through connections. He created it from the ground up, flight by flight, deal by deal. And he still flies commercial because he believes in experiencing the service he built. She closed her eyes, a wave of shame rising in her throat. The investigator paused, letting the weight of his words settle. You didn't just insult a passenger, Ms. Porter. You insulted the man who signs half this building's paychecks. She wanted to explain, wanted to say she was tired, that it had been a long week, that she had seen too many people try to sneak into first class, that she didn't mean anything by it. But she knew none of that would matter, because the truth was uglier. She hadn't looked at the ticket. Not really. She had seen a black man sitting next to two black children in first class and assumed something didn't fit. And so she made it fit, by removing him. The investigator gathered the documents and stood. You'll be contacted by the Disciplinary Review Board within 48 hours. Until then, you are on unpaid suspension. You are not to report to duty, enter any employee area, or speak publicly on this incident. She nodded slowly, numb. Am I fired? He paused at the door. That's not for me to decide, he said. But I wouldn't get your hopes up. Then he left. Denise remained seated, unmoving, in that cold little room. And for the first time in her entire career, she felt exactly what she had made Andre feel in front of the entire cabin. Small, exposed, and out of place. Meanwhile, back in the executive lounge, Andre sat with his kids, watching them laugh over a silly video Maya found. Caleb had somehow convinced one of the staff to bring cookies, and now crumbs were scattered across the coffee table. For a moment it felt normal, as if nothing had happened just hours before. But Andre knew better. This wasn't just a story they'd forget. It was something Maya might remember the next time she boarded a plane and looked around, wondering why people stared. It was something Caleb might think about when he saw someone in uniform, and wondered if that person would speak to his father with respect or suspicion. Andre checked his phone. The message he'd been waiting for had just arrived. Denise Porter suspended. Board initiating full training overhaul. Would you be open to helping us design it? He read the message twice, then he replied, yes. But only if it's real. No checkbox training. No PR fix. If you want my help, it has to change something. The reply came almost immediately. Understood. Let's make it real. Andre slid his phone back into his pocket. He wasn't looking for revenge. He never was. But he was done accepting apologies with no action behind them. If this changed even one mind, if it prevented another father from being made to feel less in front of his children, then it was worth it. Maya tugged on his arm again. Can we go home now, Daddy? He smiled and stood. Yeah, baby girl. Let's go. As they walked out of the lounge, Andre didn't look back, and this time no one questioned where he belonged. Because now, they knew. Outside the airport, the late evening air was cool and clear. City lights blinked in the distance, and the low hum of traffic created a quiet rhythm beneath the noise in Andre's mind. He stepped into the back seat of a waiting car, holding the door for Caleb and Maya as they climbed in beside him. The driver nodded respectfully and pulled away from the curb without a word. The ride was quiet at first. Caleb leaned against the window, watching streetlights flicker by. Maya sat with her head on Andre's arm, hugging her panda tightly. Andre stared straight ahead, hands folded in his lap, eyes heavy. Not from exhaustion, but from reflection. He had spent the past few hours answering questions, talking to executives and hearing words like accountability, policy review, and training reform. They had offered him everything: statements, follow-ups, apologies from the top. They even asked if he'd be willing to give a speech at the next employee conference. He had smiled politely and said they could put it in writing. But now that he was away from all the cameras, the lights, and the suited apologies, what stayed with him wasn't corporate damage control. It was his kids. Maya lifted her head. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby?" "Is that lady gonna be mean to other people too?" Andre paused before answering. "I don't think she'll get the chance to do that again." Maya thought about that, then nodded. "Good." Caleb turned away from the window. "Why didn't you yell at her, though, if she was wrong?" Andre met his son's eyes in the rearview mirror. "Because yelling doesn't change someone's heart, son. But showing them they were wrong, without lowering yourself, that's what sticks." Caleb looked down, quiet. Andre added, "If I had yelled, she would have said I was angry. If I made a scene, she would have used it to say I didn't belong. But when I stayed calm, she had nothing. And everyone saw that." Caleb nodded slowly, absorbing the lesson. They rode in silence for a few more minutes before Maya whispered, "I'm glad you sat with us again." Andre smiled and pulled her close. "Me too." Elsewhere in the city, Denise sat alone in her apartment, staring at a darkened screen. Her phone buzzed once, an unknown number, and she didn't answer. It buzzed again. A notification from a private airline employee forum. Her name was trending. She clicked the thread out of instinct and immediately wished she hadn't. Screenshots of the incident. Passenger quotes. Someone had filmed her confrontation with Andre. The video had already gone viral. "Flight attendant confronts airline owner" was being shared across platforms. The comments stung. She really thought she could tell the CEO where to sit. By the end of the week, the ripple effects of the flight had reached farther than anyone expected. It started with a press release, short, direct, but unmistakably firm. The airline publicly acknowledged the incident involving an executive-level passenger wrongfully removed from his assigned seat and announced a zero-tolerance review of discriminatory behavior. But it wasn't the statement that captured attention. It was what came next. Andre Beckett took the mic at the company's emergency leadership town hall. He hadn't planned to speak. He didn't want cameras or applause. But when the board asked him to address the top 200 managers from across the company, he knew this wasn't just about a public apology anymore. It was about whether the culture behind the apology would change. He stood at the front of a sleek conference room. No suit jacket, no tie. Just a button-down shirt, sleeves rolled to his forearms. The room was full of executives, HR leaders, and training officers. A few looked nervous. Others scribbled notes before he even said a word. Andre spoke without theatrics, his voice calm, deliberate. "I want to make something clear from the start," he began. "This isn't about punishing one flight attendant. This is about understanding what made her feel she had the right to do what she did, and what made the rest of the crew feel like they couldn't stop her." A quiet ripple moved through the room. "I've been in corporate boardrooms long enough to know what we call this. We call it unconscious bias. We call it lack of training. But I'm not here to soften the truth. That was judgment. That was assumption. And it was targeted. Toward someone who didn't look like he belonged in first class." He let the silence settle before continuing. "I'm not mad at Denise Porter," he said. "She didn't raise her voice. She didn't shout. She stayed calm. Professional even. But that's the problem, isn't it? She followed the version of professionalism she was taught. One that says, challenge what doesn't look familiar. Protect the image of the cabin. Maintain order, even if it means humiliating someone who did nothing wrong." He paused, letting it land. "I don't want your sympathy. I want your structure to change." Murmurs passed between a few rows. No one interrupted. Andre went on. "You've sent me dozens of drafts for your new Bias and Belonging initiative. Most of them were fine. Well written, safe. But none of them said what passengers like me need to hear." He reached for the printed proposal on the podium and held it up. "This one, though. This version didn't just talk about correcting behavior. It talked about building awareness. About retraining instinct. About empowering crew members like Ashley. who saw what was happening and didn't feel like she had the authority to speak up. He set the paper down. That's the version I'm backing. Heads began to nod around the room. And for those wondering if this is a PR move, it's not. It's an operational shift. Because we can't afford another moment like that, on the ground or in the air. He stepped back from the podium, voice unwavering. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for accountability. If you can commit to that, I'll stand behind this airline. If not, I'll find someone else who can. When he sat down, the room stayed silent for a beat. Then applause broke out. Not the forced kind, but the kind that came from people who had been shaken awake. That same afternoon, flight crews across the country received notifications from the airline's internal platform. Mandatory bias recognition and conflict escalation training begins Monday. All staff must complete certification before next assignment. For the first time in the company's history, the training wouldn't just be online modules and checkbox questions. It would include real scenarios, recordings, anonymous passenger testimonies, and even a live session moderated by Andre himself. The tone was different, urgent, serious, real. Meanwhile, Denise sat in the office of a third-party mediation counselor assigned to her case. She hadn't spoken much since entering. She sat with her hands in her lap, shoulders slightly hunched, as if trying to take up less space. The woman across from her, a middle-aged mediator with kind but firm eyes, waited patiently. You read the internal report? The woman asked softly. Denise nodded. And what did you feel, reading it? A long pause. Then Denise spoke, slowly, but honestly. Shame. The counselor gave her space. I didn't just embarrass him, Denise continued, eyes beginning to water. I taught his kids something about the world they didn't deserve to learn. And I did it with a smile on my face, like I was doing my job. The room was quiet. I watched the video over and over, she said. He was calm, respectful. He even tried to show me his ticket, and I didn't look. I looked at him instead, and I decided he didn't belong there. She looked up, blinking back tears. I've been flying for 12 years. I thought I was fair. Strict maybe, but fair. But now I see it. I wasn't being fair. I was being familiar. And anything that didn't look familiar I treated like a threat. The counselor nodded. That's a start. Denise let out a shaky breath. I don't expect to get my job back, but I don't want to walk away pretending I didn't do something wrong. Then don't, the counselor said. Learn from it, own it, and change. Denise nodded again, slowly this time. I want to apologize to him, she whispered. You already did, the counselor reminded her. No, Denise said. That was a formality. I want to apologize as a person, not as a flight attendant. Back at home, Andre sat at his kitchen counter, watching his kids chase each other across the living room floor. The air was filled with giggles, toys clattering, and the low hum of the evening news playing in the background. His phone buzzed. It was an email. From Denise Porter. Subject, request to apologize. Mr. Beckett, you don't owe me your time, but I wanted to say something that wasn't rehearsed, wasn't for the airline, and wasn't for a report. What I did on that flight wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And that choice came from assumptions I've never been forced to examine. Until now. You didn't humiliate me. I did that to myself. You showed restraint, dignity, and control in a situation where I gave you every reason not to. I didn't just misjudge your ticket. I misjudged your humanity. I don't expect forgiveness. But I want you to know that you changed something in me. Not through anger, but through example. And for that, I'm truly sorry. Denise Andre read the email in silence. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He just stared at the screen for a while, letting the words settle. Then he typed, I accept your apology, and I hope you never stop examining. A. Beckett. He hit send. Then he stood, walked into the living room, and scooped up Maya, spinning her until she squealed with laughter. Because in the end, the best revenge wasn't punishment. It was raising children in a world that learned to treat their father with the respect he had earned. And this was only the beginning. 2 months had passed since the flight. What had started as a quiet, personal humiliation had grown into something much larger, an inflection point for the airline industry and a cultural shift within Beckett Air. But for Andre, it was never about press, trending headlines, or viral think pieces. It was about something deeper, quieter, something he could see now in the way his children looked at him. Not just with love, but with understanding. They had seen something many kids their age never had to witness. Their father questioned, sidelined, and pushed aside without cause. And they had also seen how he chose to respond, with composure, with clarity, and now, with purpose. Inside Beckett Air's newly rebranded Equity and Culture office, a team of 10 sat around a long glass table reviewing the final rollout of the initiative now called Cabin Culture, belonging at 30,000 feet. It was the result of weeks of round-the-clock work, policy rewrites, scenario-based training, real passenger interviews, and a complete overhaul of the flight attendant code of conduct. At the head of the table sat Andre, not in CEO mode, but in mentor mode. His sleeves rolled up, coffee half drunk beside a stack of printed feedback from the trial modules. Across from him sat Ashley, who had been invited to join the team not as a token gesture, but because of how she had handled herself. Quiet courage in a moment that mattered. "We've got buy-in from 97% of current staff," one of the directors reported. "Even legacy crew members, the ones we thought would resist." Andre nodded. "And the passengers?" "We've introduced a short version of the values video during boarding," the director said. "Positive responses have tripled, fewer confrontations, more empathy." Ashley smiled. "A few attendants even said it helped them rethink how they welcome people, not just how they manage them." Andre turned to her. "That's what matters most." She tilted her head. "Do you ever regret not going public with your name when this first happened?" Andre thought for a moment. The story